am here to tell you a story that will not be conventional. The story I'm going to tell is not a fairy tale, or a romance, or a comedy. And it's not a conventional story, and it's not told through conventional means. With the rise of digitization, when we think of stories, we often think of books, movies, and television. But that's not all. In days that many of us have forgotten, stories used to be told through objects. Objects tell stories. And while we may not realize it, every day we walk around with certain objects that we use in our everyday lives that tell stories. I am, of course, talking about currency. Coins and cash are small treasure troves of information if you know what to look for. Now you might be wondering, how is that possible? Well, have you ever put any thought into what goes on to your paper banknote or your coin? Why those symbols are on there? Now, for someone like me, who loves objects, I put lots of stock into them, and so do many others. Archaeology is a vital part of historical explanation, and it's why we care so deeply about museums. Before I move on, I want to do a quick survey to satisfy my curiosity, if you will. Could you put up your hands if you have certain coins? So let's say, for those of you who have the $5 2007 coin, Hong Kong dollar, maybe a show of hands, or the 2009 $2 coin, right? I see some hands. Well, I have a little confession to make to you. You don't have those coins because those coins were not minted. Because for several years, coins were stopped from being minted in Hong Kong, and they were resumed in 2012. The point I'm trying to make here is, despite using these things every day, we don't really pay any attention to them. Now, before moving on, I want to ask a few more rhetorical questions. Why is it that the US dollar has George Washington and Abraham Lincoln on it? Why is it that despite all being under the Eurozone, different European countries, despite having the same currency, have national variations of the same coin? And why is it that the Queen is on the British pound? Well, the answer is quite simple. Coins, more than just monetary value, also show sentimental value physically. Let's take a look at this coin, for example. This is a 1901 10-cent Queen Victoria coin. This is actually a Hong Kong coin, and it's made of silver. So what does this coin tell us about their society? Well, presumably, this society, the Crown Colony of Hong Kong, cares deeply about their queen and the crown, and this is their symbol, their ideal. Right? Well, no, not really. Because a student of history might tell you that many of the people in Hong Kong did not look up to this face, literally. This was the face of tyranny and of foreign oppression and of being ruled by others and not ruling for yourselves. So while I said earlier that coins show value and a society's value, it's not always that clear-cut. Sometimes coins are used to show the values that the storyteller, in this case the Royal Mint of England and the British Crown, want you to see. The British Crown wants you to think that Hong Kong loves the Crown, and they want you to think that they're proud of being in the empire, while many may not have been. In a recent conversation with a teacher, we were talking about this, and how, while this coin doesn't represent Hong Kong, maybe the modern ones do, and how Hong Kong, as having this unique position as a city-state, does not really have a sense of nationalism. So I'm trying to answer a question with money, but not the usual way. What does Hong Kong value? And so first, we'll take a look at our coins. Now, the current coins that you use every day is called the Bauhinia series. It was released in 1994 because they knew the handover was coming, and the old coins with Queen Elizabeth simply would not do. So every variation of the Bauhinia series has a denomination, or the amount this coin is worth on one side, and the flower on the other. This is the Bauhinia flower, and is the same flower on our flag and our passports and our ID cards. So why this flower? I wish I could tell you there was this mythical story of this flower being found on some mystical mountain, but it's not. It wasn't even discovered by the Chinese. This flower was found in Pak Phulam by French missionaries in the 1700s and was spread, not as a result of it being special, but simply because the French missionaries were very successful. So while this flower has a very botanical representation here, it's not botanical everywhere else. Let's take a look at this flag. While some of you might be thinking, well, sure, Paarban, let's say this flower was not really that important to Chinese heritage or Hong Kong's heritage. Why not adopt it? Well, here's the problem. It's how we came to select it. The Chinese government, the PRC, decided that this new SAR of theirs needed to have a new flag. The old coat of arms was not acceptable. And so they had a panel, and people from all around Hong Kong come in and submit their own ideas for what the new flag should be. 2,000 people submitted their ideas. And you know what? It didn't really go well. Just like the other democratic processes in Hong Kong, the Chinese government decided they didn't like any of the designs. So they stopped all of the designs and had one of their judges come up with this one. And while you might not know that much about biology, I can assure you that we all realize that stars do not appear naturally on flowers. Those are 5 communist stars. They're not symbols of Hong Kong. And this means the flag isn't really a symbol of Hong Kong. This flower and this flag and this emblem is a symbol of the PRC, not the 852. So clearly our coins are a no-go. How about our notes? Maybe we fare better there. Well, firstly, we have the Hong Kong $10 note. And some of you might notice that the $10 note is not like any other note that we have in Hong Kong. This is because of who makes this note. The $10 note is made by the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. It's the same people who make our coins. And there's not really much on it. It's just purple and abstract. So we can't really look to this for our values. How about the other notes? Well, of the other notes, there are 3 banks that print all of the banknotes in Hong Kong. The Bank of China, which is, well, I'll let you guess who controls that bank. There's the HSBC, which is not based in Hong Kong or Shanghai, and has been found guilty of money laundering for the cartel and Swiss banking, according to the United States government. So they're not really the paragon of hope we're looking for. And lastly, we have Standard Chartered, which is maybe the least egotistical of the bunch. Firstly, let's look at these 2 notes. These are notes from HSBC on the bottom and Bank of China on the top. Bank of China has always had the Bank of China building that they're known for on their notes, and usually when they do have special notes, they have notes that don't really represent Hong Kong as much as it represents China. For example, in 2008, the Bank of China had the 2008 Beijing Olympics, but that's the Beijing Olympics, not the Hong Kong Olympics. We don't have those. And then we have HSBC. While many might think that the lion is a symbol of Hong Kong, it's really not. It's more specifically a symbol of HSBC. This is the lion that guards the gates to HSBC. And if you notice, both notes have simply the biggest their building on it. And this is what it's become. And for many years, it's been this way. And if not their buildings, they simply have a view of Victoria Harbor. And you might think, well, that's good, right? Victoria Harbor is a symbol of Hong Kong. But if you notice, it's always specifically the central side, and more specifically, the financial district. Does that really represent us? While we can't deny Hong Kong's importance as an Asian trading center, banks, and their importance to Hong Kong society, they're not what we hold dear to our hearts. So let's look at the other option. Now, this is a newer series by Standard Chartered. And this is the first time they have not been using the similar, let's put the Standard Chartered building on the note. Well, they have it on the other side, though, but in smaller font. So as you can see, these things are more representative of Hong Kong. We see natural geographical locations and animals native to Hong Kong, and we see Chinese opera and family dinners. These things are intrinsic parts of Hong Kong's tradition and culture. But at the same time, there's still more to go. Sadly, our notes are made by corporate Hong Kong, and while they're not meant to be, they're made for corporate Hong Kong. Now you might be thinking, what's wrong with these notes? What more could we add to it? Well, I mentioned back earlier about George Washington and how the White House is on these notes. Where are our national monuments and our heroes? Where is that history? While we certainly have the culture, we don't have that history. Why not have someone like Sun Yat-sen on our notes to represent how Hong Kong became democratic in a sense? Why not have the Kowloon Walled City to show how we have been metropolitan before metropolitan was a thing? Why not have the other side of Victoria Harbor to show that aspect of Hong Kong's culture? Or even Government House, which has been the head of government in Hong Kong for centuries. But none of these things are on here, and there's a reason for that. Much like the British coin I showed you earlier, our storytellers are not really our own. Our stories are told by the PRC, and I'm not criticizing them necessarily. They have their own goals, and they're doing what's best for them, and it's not necessarily best for us. We won't see symbols of colonization. In fact, the PRC is actively in a state of decolonization. Those Queen Elizabeth coins you still see lying around from before 1994, they're actively being taken in and destroyed and replaced with newer dollars. They're destroying that part of our history because it's a bad reminder for them, because it represents the unequal treaties and foreign oppression. They don't want that, and so we won't see that. Sadly, this is what happens when you don't have your own storytellers. Because for the longest time, Hong Kong has been British Hong Kong and has been Hong Kong SAR, but it has not been Hong Kong, Hong Kong. So what do we do when our designated storytellers cannot be relied upon to do their duty? It's up to us as a community to tell the stories that we want to tell and to uphold the values that will not always be represented by those we are supposed to be able to trust. Thank you.